Peace, how you doing? This is Dr. Samori Swygert signing in. Today we're going to be talking about the masters of the universe and the global land grab that has us playing musical chairs for earth, property, and real estate. Okay? Now, it's very important that we get a firm grip and understanding of what I'm talking about because we're living and dealing in some real crucial times, and not a lot of people are really coming to grips and understanding the enormity, the severity, the extent, the importance of what I'm going to be discussing. First, I'm going to give you the 8 different dynamics that I have identified that we must be cognizant about when we talk about this global land grab. Very first thing that we need to understand when I say a global land grab, we must visualize what 1 acre looks like, okay? Now, if you want to know what 1 acre looks like visually, picture a regulation size NFL football grid. NFL grid, 100 yards, right? 1 acre is exactly the same size, just take away 10 yards. So 90 yards. And you can look at that from length and width. So just imagine a football field, regulation, 90 yards instead of 100. So when we're talking about swaths of land, you might as well just say a football field. That's an acre, okay? Now that we have the visualization of what I'm talking about, we must talk about the 8 different dynamics that I'm outlining, all right? Pay attention to these as you walk with your eyes open, as you walk up and down the street every day, as you read the news, as you watch the news, as you watch movies, as you hear things popping up with your city council. Number 1, the buying up of private islands. Number 2, corporations that are buying massive swaths of land. Number 3, the use of eminent domain and easement. Number 4, the buying up of water rights all around the globe. Number 5, trying to privatize and purchase the national forests and national parks in America. Number 6, the government acts that are passed by Congress, signed and executed by the President of the United States. Number 7, the process of gentrification. And number 8, by religious groups that are purchasing gargantuan masses of land. Okay, these are 8 different dynamics that I've identified. There's probably more, but that's what I'm focusing on, and we're going to get very much in depth with this. Okay, now the other thing is we have to start thinking bigger, better, broader in terms of real power and ownership in real estate. See, we think in these terms of these small boxes, and small boxes with small minds comes up with small talk, small lingo. And that sounds kind of like this. Yeah, I'm repping my hood. This is my corner right here. This is my block. Your hood, your corner, your block. This is small time talk. We have got to elevate the conversation. We have got to elevate our thought process. There's a lot more involved and a lot more at stake. All right? So let's delve into this. We're at a crucial moment in time when we as domestic and global citizens, stewards of the earth, must realize that we're in a global land grab. It's a race to the bottom where the global elite believe they are the masters of the universe, from door to door, to city limits, to county lines, to interstate boundaries, coast to coast, shore to shore, country to continent. We're witnessing real-life musical chairs, real-life games of Monopoly, except the chairs are homes. The chairs are blocks, communities, estates, acres, hectares, islands, and the vast swaths of land. All of this is being hoarded by the triad. Now you're saying, Samori, what is the triad? Dr. Swygert, what is the triad you're talking about? I'm going to tell you what the triad is. The triad is 1, wealthy elite people or wealthy elite families. That's 1. Number 2, corporations. And number 3, the government and military. So that's the triad right there. Wealthy elite people and families. Number 2, corporations. And number 3, the government tied with the military. Next, the famous cliche, you can't grow more earth. Understand that. That is very true. You cannot grow more earth. Earth is a measurable mass of finite resources and specific measurements and dimensions. Once it's owned, you can only get it by purchasing it, inheriting it, bequeathment, war, usurpation of land, government declaration, or philanthropy. So you better get it while you can get it, because you can't grow any more earth. I'm sorry. We must understand the power and the potential of land. Land is pregnant with minerals and rare elements and metals. Land has water below it in the forms of wells and aquifers. It's traversed with rivers, streams, estuaries, and lakes. Land has oil and natural gas. Land facilitates horticulture and agriculture. Land provides for orchards, groves, farms, ranches, lumber groves, vineyards, all the fruits, vegetables, plants, and medicinal herbs that we need to maintain and sustain the vitality of our life. Land provides for space for hospitals, schools, housing, military installations, factories, casinos, tourism, and industrial development. Land. Yes. We must strategically group together to acquire land and other forms of real estate to maintain power and control. We must be committed to the transfer of wealth from our sacrifices to our progeny, to our posterity, generation to generation, or we will witness the complete eradication or permanent subjugation under a system of feudalism by these so-called masters of the universe, because we did not act on acquiring land. Now, I'm going to get into the details. I really hope you have your pencil and paper out. You need to take copious notes, because I'm giving you names, I'm giving you articles, I'm giving you dates. You're going to have to take notes, all right? The international and domestic facts on the global land grab. Number 1, Forbes magazine, April 2015. They put out an article and it said Apple. Apple, this is the electronics company. You got your iPhone, your iPad, your MacBook Pro. Apple is purchasing forests. Yes, forests, like, trees and lumber. Apple is purchasing forests. And they've purchased 3,600 acres. Remember, I said 1 acre is like a football field. So basically, that's like saying Apple has purchased 3,600 football fields worth of forest in North Carolina. Not just that. In a county called Aroostook County, Maine, state of Maine, Apple again has purchased 32,400 acres of forestry. Okay, so that's like saying Apple purchased 32,400 football fields. Are you getting the picture? Not only that, Business Insider published an article detailing how Apple purchased a 5,000-acre military base 4 miles north of Silicon Valley in California. This is to presumably use for research, testing, and development of their future automobiles. Okay? May of 2014, Fortune magazine published an article and reported that Apple has purchased 1.1 million acres of forest in China. Yes, you heard me correctly. 1.1 million acres of forest in China Apple has purchased. Not only that, March 2014, the Washington Post published an article, and it detailed how the Koch brothers, many of you are familiar with the Koch brothers, the rich billionaires that control a lot of industries. They are heavily influencing elections, heavily influencing elections by super PACs, and a lot more other things. But let me tell you what the Koch brothers do. The Koch brothers own 1.1 million acres of land in Alberta, Canada, and that's roughly the size of Delaware, they said. This land that they own, this 1.1 million acres in Alberta, Canada, it's oil sands. It's the rich region of Canada that Phillips, ExxonMobil, Chevron, Shell, and a lot of the other oil and gas industry titans are all competing for control, and they're poised for these oil sands and tar sands for the Dakota Access Pipeline. They were ready for the Keystone Pipeline, but the Keystone Pipeline got nixed. And what it is they are trying to get this crude oil and these oil sands from Canada down the middle of the U.S. out to the Gulf for their refinement. So this is what's happening. Not only that, this is something else we need to talk about. We're going to move outside of the U.S. Now we're going to talk about how human lives that have been in a certain geographical locale for generations are being uprooted and displaced. The Washington Post put out an article in July 2014, and it documented that the Yanomami tribe of Brazil and Venezuela that have inhabited the Amazon rainforest for generations, the government with ties to corporations wants to pass a decree that the land can be used for quote-unquote public interest. This would include farming, mining, oil and gas pipelines, hydroelectric dams, human settlements, and military operations. This would ultimately displace 40,000 Yanomami tribe members from a combined land mass of 69,000 square miles between Brazil and Venezuela. 69,000 square miles. That's huge. And this tribe has occupied that space for generations. Moving along, April 2015, U.S. News and World Report said that 7.4 million acres of valuable land has been lost due to the energy boom of 2000 to 2013. They further noted that there are over 1 million fracking, oil well, and horizontal oil drilling sites across America now, and that we've lost what's equivalent to 3 Yellowstone national parks due to the oil industry. Okay, how China has claimed control of 3,200 acres in the South China Sea for development and control of military operations to gain maritime control and dominion over that region in the South China Sea. And see, this is something that you're not really seeing being reported too much. We hear about Iraq and Afghanistan, and Pakistan, and but things of that nature, going to Africa with AFRICOM. But there's something going on in the South China Sea, and there are these islands out there that China is trying to gain control of that the U.S. doesn't want China to have control of. And this is an actual conflict that's going on now that is being downplayed and not discussed. But that's 3,200 acres of actual geographic control. Next, moving along. The Keystone XL pipeline and the Dakota Access Pipeline, they were all oil industry infrastructure projects, and they would transfer oil and oil sands and crude oil output from Canada to the Gulf. Like I said earlier, the Keystone XL would have been 1,700 miles long and then extended through the Rosebud Sioux Reservation. Now, how big is the Rosebud Sioux Reservation for the Sioux Indians or the Sioux Natives? It is 922,759 acres. So the Rosebud Sioux Reservation owned almost 1 million acres. And that was promised to them under the 1868 Treaty of Fort Laramie between the U.S. government and the Sioux. Then the plan fell through, and they tried to reroute it to a 1,172-mile pipeline called the Bakken Pipeline, Bakken. And that will go through North Dakota, but it's also nicknamed the Dakota Access Pipeline. So the Bakken Pipeline is the same thing as the Dakota Access Pipeline. And see, you have the big energy titans in it: Sunoco, Energy Transfer Partners, Phillips 66, Enbridge, and Marathon Petroleum. So this is what you're seeing. You're seeing how big corporations and their infrastructure plans, they are willing to go through hundreds of thousands of acres, even defy treaties, and go through sacred land to have the potential to contaminate water supply and water sources to get this money, to get power. Now, here's another thing. This eminent domain is a real thing. People must pay attention to eminent domain. There's a family in Pennsylvania. They're called the Holleran family, and they're in Susquehanna County. And they own a maple tree grove that the local government is using eminent domain to take control of their maple tree grove to develop an oil pipeline from northern Pennsylvania to Albany, New York. The judge of the case approved the oil company and said that he would dispatch U.S. Marshals to arrest anybody that interferes with the cutting down of the maple trees so that they can actually build the pipeline. And here's the irony of the whole situation. The name of the pipeline is called the Constitution Pipeline. So here you have the teaming up or the siding of government entities with corporations for power. So despite the fact that this family has owned this land and they have their maple tree groves, you have an oil company that says, we want to go through your land with this pipeline. But your trees and the whole situation of your property, it is obstructing what we need to get done. And I'm going to state this case so that the judge sides with me. And the judge ruled, the Supreme Court judge of that county ruled in their favor. And then said, if you get out there and you try to protest and get in front of the cutting down of your trees, these are your trees on your property, I'm going to have the U.S. Marshals arrest you. That speaks volumes. Decibels, okay? Now, not just that. As we talk about the church, understand the power and the potential of the people and the church, parishioners and the church. But I'm not talking about your Southern Baptists. I'm talking about November 2013. The Mormon Church in Florida purchased 382,000 acres of land in Northwest Florida. Excuse me. The Mormon Church already owned 290,000 acres of land in Florida. Okay? So they already owned 290,000 acres of land. Then they came and purchased 382,000 acres. And this deal pushed the Mormon Church to be one of the largest land owners in Florida to over 600,000 acres. The Mormons already own 7,000 acres in Hawaii and several other plots of land in Utah and other states. Okay? Things we must pay attention to. You have religious organizations that are even buying up land, all right? They are involved in the global land grab. What are you setting aside for your children, your posterity, the next generation? Are you saving? Are you partnering up with your friends and family? Or do you have investment clubs so that you can participate in this? Or are you going to set aside and let everybody buy up all the land, control all the land, and you will be a permanent renter, a permanent serf on a plantation, on a manor, in a system of feudalism? Moving along. Number 11. President Obama did something that's very interesting. President Obama extended the aquatic U.S. Pacific Remote Islands Marine Monuments. I'm going to say it again. He extended the aquatic U.S. Pacific Remote Islands Marine Monuments. Now, President Bush established it in 2009. Obama has now expanded that U.S. maritime control from 87,000 square miles of water domain to 782,000 square miles. And this is according to an article published in June 2014 by the Washington Post. So President Bush had set it aside for 87,000 square miles of water domain. Obama came along and upped it to 782,000 square miles of water domain. And I'm going to come back to how they do this in a later portion of this discussion. Now, here's something else. This is going to blow your mind. These millennials are doing some tremendous things, and it makes you think, how serious am I, and how serious are my friends, my associates, my affiliates? How serious are we when it comes to the future? Let me tell you why. June 2013, NPR, National Public Radio, published an article on their website and revealed that a small group of young millennials called the Summit Group, they got together. They did what Dr. Claude Anderson talks about. They practiced group economics. They got investors, and they purchased their own 10,000-acre mountain. Listen to what I said. They purchased their own 10,000-acre mountain. And this is called Powder Mountain, and it's in Utah. They said the mountain will be used for retreats, meetings, getaways, private housing, ski lodges, and etc. All right? How serious are we about this? Are we really about that life? Or are we playing games? Nobody else is playing games. Everybody else understands the severity and the importance of what's going on. Excuse me. The next thing I want to talk about, understanding water rights. When you purchase land, you purchase property, understand there is wealth underneath that. It's like I said earlier, the earth is pregnant with a lot of gems, a lot of jewels, a lot of water. You must do your due diligence to investigate, survey the land, survey the property, ask the right questions, and find out these are real technical terms. What are the water rights on this property, and what are the mineral rights on this property? You need to ask that whenever you purchase real estate. Listen to this. June 2008, Bloomberg Business News reported on a Texas tycoon by the name of T. Boone Pickens. He owns a 68,000-acre ranch in Texas that sits on top of the Ogallala Aquifer, okay? So I said he has a 68,000-acre ranch, so basically he owns what will be equivalent to 68,000 football fields. And it sits on top of this water aquifer. T. Boone Pickens is the largest water rights owner in the country, and he wants to sell up to 65 billion gallons of water annually to Dallas through piping and ground transportation. Now, here's the kicker. Why is he the largest water rights owner in the country? The Ogallala Aquifer that his 68,000-acre ranch sits on has over a quadrillion gallons of fresh water. Do you hear what I said? Over a quadrillion gallons of fresh water. Not a million, not a billion, not a trillion. A quadrillion gallons of fresh water. I'm not saying quadrillion as if it's some imaginary unit of measurement to say that he owns a lot of water. No, that is the specific measurements that they assess when they do land surveys. Let that sink in for a minute. Moving along. In May 2016, RT News, the Supreme Court of the state of Maine, here we go with water rights again. The Supreme Court of the state of Maine gave Nestle control, Nestle water, okay? Nestle has subsidiaries like Arrowhead Water, Poland Spring. So, the Supreme Court of the state of Maine gave Nestle control of the groundwater rights of Fryeburg, Maine for 45 years. The people of Fryeburg, Maine have been protesting. They're upset, rightfully so. How does the Supreme Court of the state of Maine give a corporation groundwater rights for 45 years? Poland Spring, which is a subsidiary of Nestle, was granted the authority to take 603,000 gallons of water per day from their groundwater. And this is approximately 2.3 million liters of water per day. How much is that when they bottle it up and sell that? Nestle only has to pay the town of Fryeburg, Maine, $12,000 per month. That is pennies in the bucket. $12,000 per month when you're taking 2.3 million liters of water per day and you're selling this domestically and globally. Not only that, May of 2016, USA Today published an article that detailed that Nestle Water is embroiled in a battle with the United States Forest Service. So a division of the government Nestle is embroiled in a battle with, right? You have to listen to this story. It shows you the hubris of corporations. Nestle had an agreement that they could pump water from the national forest in San Bernardino, California. However, listen to this, the agreement expired in 1988. But Nestle has been pumping water unchecked since it expired in 1988. Not 2008, not 1998, 1988. Well over 3 decades after the contract expired, they've just been pumping water unchecked. The National Forest Service finally reevaluated the agreement and said that they will give them a 5-year agreement that must be renewed. Nestle refused to acknowledge that new agreement and said that the United States Forest Service is overstepping and infringing on Nestle's water rights. How about that? How about that? Nestle does not own the water in San Bernardino's park, but you're saying that the National Forest Service is infringing and overstepping on your water rights. No, the agreement that you had expired in 1988, and you've been pumping unchecked for this whole time. Last year alone, Nestle pumped 36 million gallons of water last year from the San Bernardino National Forest under its Arrowhead Spring Water subsidiary brand. Just last year alone, 36 million gallons of water. Not only that, June 2016, Bloomberg Business News showed that Nestle also acquired groundwater rights in Phoenix, Arizona, to pump a scheduled 36 million gallons of water annually out of Phoenix to be bottled and sold. So I just gave you some stories, some narratives, real stories of how water rights are being acquired, right? Now, let's move on. In July 2016, Bloomberg Business published an article. It shows how De Beers, the diamond company, De Beers and other exploration companies and diamond manufacturers have staked over 50 million acres of frozen Canadian tundra to scour and dig for diamonds in obscure regions. 50 million acres, 50 million acres of frozen Canadian tundra they've already staked out. They are up in there. They are in ice, digging and getting ice. Do you hear me? This is serious business. Moving along. Another thing that I discussed in the 8-point dynamics is that we must understand that there are groups and wealthy individuals and corporations that are pushing to privatize national state parks and forests. They're trying to get ownership through these corporations, through highest bidders, or try to get it through state control. Now, John Poindexter is the owner of the 30,000-acre Cibolo Creek Ranch in Texas. And this is the same ranch where Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia died. Aside from his own 30,000-acre ranch, what is he doing? He's trying to acquire 46,000 acres of land from a Texas state park for his personal ownership. Do you hear what I just said? It is a Texas state park, but he's trying to get 46,000 acres of that for himself. On top of the fact that he already owns a 30,000-acre ranch. Now, you have to ask yourself, what are the possible implications and the ramifications if this becomes a precedent or a trend within the United States? You're going to have all these rich, wealthy, elite, and corporations just gobbling up this land. And what are you going to... We're going to be playing hopscotch on pieces of land, trying to find some type of place to live. Next, we must also make sure that we're fully cognizant of real estate acquisition strategies. You're saying, well, what are you talking about? I'm going to tell you what I'm talking about. Many private equity firms, hedge funds, and investment firms, you have like the Blackstone Group, Cerebras, Colony Starwood Homes, the Carlyle Group, American Homes for Rent, and more. These are just some that were named. I was doing the research in the Washington Post and in Bloomberg Business News, and they outline all this, but I just snatched this up, the quick points. During the 2008 financial crisis, where everybody's going through the economy collapsed, people were getting foreclosed on their homes. During the 2008 financial crisis, Blackstone spent more than $2.5 billion to get 16,000 homes to manage as single-family rentals. Listen to what I said. They're not getting these homes and putting them back on the market to sell. No, they are keeping them and holding them into perpetuity. And they're only allowing them to be released as single-family rentals. No one can ever own these homes. All you can do is sign a lease. That's it. But it gets better than that. Blackstone already owns $1 billion worth of homes in October of 2012. Blackstone chairman Steven Schwartzman said that the company, listen to this, the company is spending $100 million a week on houses. Do you hear what I just said? The company is spending $100 million a week on houses. What are you doing? Are you going out and you're just popping bottles? You're buying Jordans? You're buying Gucci bags? And these people out here spending $100 million a week buying up all this property and real estate, never to release it for sale on the market again. Only using it as rental property. They are controlling the market with this. The conversion of private property to single-family rental homes is projected to be approximately a $3 trillion market with a T. $3 trillion market. So this is a business strategy, and we're not paying attention to this. Moving along, we must also discuss the buying up of private islands. Billionaires around the globe are buying their own private islands. The list is extensive, but I'm just going to name a few. Larry Ellison, the owner of the company Oracle, owns approximately 98% of the Hawaiian island of Lanai. Ted Turner, owner of CNN, owns a 4,680-acre island of St. Phillips on the coast of South Carolina. Richard Branson of Virgin purchased Necker Island of the British Virgin Islands. John Malone, an American media mogul, purchased the island of Sampson Bay in the Bahamas. Mel Gibson owns the $15 million, 5,480 100-acre private island of Mago. You have the singer and songwriter Shakira. She purchased the Bonds Cay. It's a 700-acre island north of the Bahamas. Bill Gates owns a $25 million, 314-acre island in the Republic of Belize. And then you have Bernard Arnault, who's the CEO of Louis Vuitton, Hennessy. He's the fifth richest person at $40 billion net worth, and he owns a 133-acre oasis in the Bahamas. You can keep your corner. These people are buying up their own islands, okay? Next, we must also discuss the double-edged sword of the Antiquities Act of 1906. I kind of touched on it earlier, and I said I'm going to bring it back when I get further down into this discussion. And we've arrived at that point. We're going to talk about this right now. Pay attention. The double-edged sword of the Antiquities Act of 1906. This was signed into law under President Theodore Roosevelt, and it gave the president the power to designate national monuments of the North American continent, and it can be set aside for ecological, cultural, historical preservation. President Obama has designated more than any president. Under Obama's administration, he's designated 550 million acres. Okay? President Obama has designated 550 million acres, meaning it's hands-off territory. Nobody can get it. Not corporations, not rich, wealthy people, not the government can't do anything more to it unless the president that's in decides to do something with that. That's it. So, yes, it may be good when you think of ecological preservation and not tampering with our ecology. But then you have to ask yourself, well, if everybody's going up all around the globe and domestically buying up property, maybe some of the impoverished citizens of the United States, some of the middle-class citizens that are trying to find housing and land and real estate, maybe we could have participated in getting and acquiring some of those 550 million acres. Now, we can think of the 40 acres and a mule when we talk about reparations. And see, a lot of people said Obama should have done something for reparations. He should have made some policy, some step towards it. But our Congress, our congressional leaders did not force his hand. They didn't want to upset the president. Every other group, every other demographic has been receiving policies and benefits and protections under the Obama administration. Now, you think about this. 550 million acres. We got to really work this out. 550 million acres that nobody can touch. Now, we have what's estimated 40 million African Americans in the United States. If you were to divide 550 million acres by 40 million African Americans, do you know what that comes to? 13.7. That means for each person of the 40 million African Americans that they have documented in the United States, each person, each African American could have 13.7 acres of land, meaning you would own the equivalent of 13.7 football fields to yourself, to have and to hold from this day forth. There were things that could have been done. Now that's just 550 million acres that nobody can touch. Nobody. Not I, not you, not corporations, nothing. Long story short, Long story short, we have to get serious about what we're going to do and making these moves, because the triad that I said, the wealthy elite, the corporations, and the government and military, are snatching up the land. But I'm not going to let you go without touching on the dynamic of gentrification. This is right in your face. Between city and state government deals with corporate land developers and real estate firms, we're seeing masses of citizens being uprooted from neighborhoods they've been long-term inhabitants of. People are being pushed out by the rising rent, the rising property taxes, and the rising real estate values that decreases the affordability of housing. The culture and history of neighborhoods are being erased and eradicated, and the citizens are being replaced by young millennials flushed with cash. The cash is coming from careers and professions and jobs in the defense industry, the technology industry, the scientific community, the intelligence community, law firms, and big contracts. Many of the traditional citizens of the neighborhoods are baby boomers. They're on fixed income retirement, or they have service-based jobs whose salaries have plateaued. This is highly visible in places like Chicago, Detroit, New York City, D.C., Baltimore, and Pennsylvania, and a lot of other areas all across the United States. Traditional neighborhood stores, black-owned businesses, and more are being replaced with yoga studios, coffee shops, cycling studios, pet care emporiums, trendy restaurants and lounges, luxury grocery stores. And here's the other thing. When we talk about gentrification and the uprooting of people, we must not forget about what's happening in Plantersville, South Carolina. Samori, what's happening in Plantersville, South Carolina? I'm going to tell you what's happening in Plantersville, South Carolina. This is where you have the Gullah Geechee. The Gullah Geechee, long-term inhabitants, generation upon generation, with a direct connection to our African ancestors reside there. And you have corporations, and they still have the language, they still have the customs, the arts, the dance, the rituals, all of that from generations. But now you have corporations and wealthy individuals trying to take that from the descendants of these African ancestors that inhabit that land. Plantersville, South Carolina. This is the Gullah Geechee. Now I'm also going to go into, I'm going to try and make it fast for you. I'm going to go over just a few of the Forbes list of private landowners. Now, when I go through this, I want you to get your mind right. John Malone owns 2.2 million acres between New Hampshire, New Mexico, Texas, Wyoming, and Maine. Ted Turner owns 2 million acres in New Mexico, Colorado, Montana, Florida, and more. Archie Emerson owns 1.87 million acres in California and Washington State. Brad Kelly owns 1.7 million acres between Texas, New Mexico, and Florida. The Irving family owns 1.2 million acres in Maine. The Singleton family owns 1.11 million acres in New Mexico. The King Ranch heirs own 215 acres in Texas and Florida. And you have the Pingree heirs who own 830,000 acres in Maine. So that is just a little bit. The list is very long. There are a lot of wealthy landowners that own hundreds of thousands to millions of acres of land, and we're playing games. So then we think about, in a historical context, things like Manifest Destiny, Go West, Young Man. You think of the Trail of Tears. You think of the Indian Removal Act of 1830 that was signed by President Andrew Jackson, where the natives were uprooted from the land at gunpoint by the U.S. military. You think of the Long Walk of the Navajo of 1864, where the natives were forced to walk from what's now considered Arizona to eastern New Mexico. You think about what happens when you own real estate or property, and if the law enforcement or government doesn't want you or consider you a threat, they'll bomb you, like the move bombing in Philadelphia. We think about what can happen when you have land, property, and you have not fully described who will get what when you pass away, generation to generation. And will there be arguments? You think about Michael Jackson and the Neverland Ranch. See, this land grab, it's not occurring by gunpoint. This land grab is happening by ballpoint. It is these major contracts that are being signed and dealt out. And then the other thing is, like, when you think about with Standing Rock, when they're talking about the Dakota Access Pipeline, you think about how when they were trying to go through the Sioux Nation, that over a 922,000 acre reservation, they were sicking dogs. They were using water cannons in freezing weather, shooting people with rubber bullets, and all types of torturous methods to ease, quote, ease and move the natives off their land so that they can try and build this pipeline. So this is serious business. We need to stop playing games. Now, I know you're going to be like, Samori, well, what are the solutions? Dr. Samori Swygert, what are the solutions? Well, let me say this. Let's not make this complicated, okay? People always be like, well, you bring up this information. You presented us with this data. You're correct. I did present you with data. I presented you with facts. I gave you the sources so you can go back and double check for yourself. This is nothing I conjured up in my head. This is real stuff. This is me sifting through over 30 articles, getting information and extracting data and giving it to you. People are like, well, then what's the solution? Don't get coy. The thing is this, you already know the solution. People try to make things so sophisticated. We need some sophisticated blueprint plan when really you know what the answer is. You heard this before on several platforms. You've heard Dr. Claude Anderson. You've heard Dr. Amos Wilson, two great black men that break down economics and psychology. And the answer is simply this: group economics. And we have to stop throwing that phrase around like it's some trendy conscious thing to say. It's time to do. It's time to perform. It's time for action. It's time for execution. The only thing to talk about is who you're going to team up with, how much money you're going to be contributing, how frequently you're going to be contributing to that account, and which resources you're going to use to go through the internet to find potential real estate purchases. That's the only thing that needs to be discussed. I've given you the facts and figures. What more must I do for you? We have to make the necessary sacrifices now or be prepared to be wiped out in the future. I can scroll all up and down my Facebook timeline and see people posting photos of vacations, destination weddings, new handbags, new sneakers, new shoes, new outfits, exquisite luxury restaurants that they wine and dine at, how we party at happy hour, how we turn up and pop bottles at the club, how we got tickets to the football and basketball games, who's going to Las Vegas, showing off their latest tech purchases from Best Buy, their latest car. So make no mistake about it. You got money. We have money. We just need to redirect the flow of the money and the purchases. We have to now get serious and redirect those same dollars into investment clubs and start making land and real estate purchases. If hearing me tell you how millions of acres are being bought up doesn't scare you, I don't know what else to tell you. We have to attend real estate auctions where you can purchase real estate for cheap. You have David Anderson, who's going around telling y'all day in, day out, get you some land. Get you some tax lien certificates. Do something. Get with your fraternity and sororities, your homeboys, your homegirls, your book clubs. Challenge each other to make a monthly commitment with a specific goal in mind, a deadline, and incorporate other fundraising strategies and hustle hard to meet that number and that time frame, because we see that acres are being snatched up by the millions. The other solution that doesn't require your money is getting on your city councils and boards so you can hear and participate in the city's future plans. Bring your crew so you can flex your powers and you can articulate your concerns at these meetings to ensure that everyone is knowledgeable, and you can intervene when corporations or council members make real estate planning proposals to your city that doesn't have you or your people's best interest in mind. And lastly, bring your children to these meetings. Each and every time, they have to see and understand the importance of what you do and how they do it early. Let's leave our children acres and hectares, estates, real estates, islands, and more. Let's not leave them with empty bottles of alcohol. Let's not leave them with old outfits, old shoes, tattered shoes, photos of vacations, antiquated automobiles, and debt. No. Let's outfit our next generation with real, tangible assets that guarantees that they will be competitors in this fast-paced, sophisticated global economy of the 21st century and beyond. That's what we have to do. It's mandatory. Now, I hope that I've made a convincing case and argument. I've laid out all the evidence and exhibits. Hopefully, I stimulated some type of thought. Made you want to act when you hear what's going on. Young people purchasing mountains, people buying islands, people owning millions of acres of forests. We've got to step up and do better. Okay, I'm out. This is Dr. Samori Swygert. You can hit me on Twitter at DocSwag06, DocSwagg06. You can also find my postings on a Facebook fan page called 2MASC. 2MASC, that stands for 2 minutes and some change. You can hear more of my audio contributions on YouTube. You can type in my name, SAMORI SWYGERT in YouTube. You'll see a lot of postings that I have up there with Dr. Boyce Watkins' channel. Also, I encourage you to, not only am I a blogger, a writer, somebody that loves sifting through data and extracting it and conveying it and sharing it with people to nourish their minds and thoughts, but I'm also a poet. I have a very good album out. The name of the album is entitled Porn, P-O-R-N, and it stands for Poetry, Oration, Rhythm, and Narratives. And it is a sensual album, but it's not crass and raunchy. It is tastefully done. It is classy. It is for the grown and sexy. So you get your wine, you get your lover, and I agree that you will have yourself a very good time, a good evening. So that's available on Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, CD Baby. I also have an audiobook out. It's entitled Speak On It, Mandatory Conversations for Black America. That's also available on iTunes, Amazon, Google Play, and CD Baby. And I talk about a lot of crucial issues, kind of similar to what I just did for you. I have a whole audiobook on that. So you want to check that out. I also have a book of poetry that I've published, and that's called Black Eye on America. You can get that at my website, www.blackladder.net. That's black like the color, ladder like the device you climb, .net. It's not a .com. www.blackladder.net.